So I mentioned before we started, we are at the start of the show. We have a guest joining us. Trevor Loudon is well known, I'm going to guess, to most of my listeners, but Trevor Loudon is, as many of you likely know, he's an author. He has a fabulous New Zealand accent, which is not why he's great, but it's fun to listen to. But he has an accent, but he is a true, genuine researching, writing, blogging, speaking activist. He works very hard uncovering the truth about the networks of people who have power in our country, what is motivating people in our country to seek the policies they do. And the reason I want to talk with him today, we spoke a little bit over this past weekend, was I want him to talk to all of us about how the left in this country, the leftists in Washington in this country may actually be, not may, they are actually taking advantage of the weakness of the coronavirus, the economy in our country because of the shutdown related to the coronavirus. How much does that matter? Are we really just facing a vital, necessary response to a health problem, or are we seeing this? Can we see this and recognize this is also a political challenge, a real challenge to the core strength of America? So, I believe we have Trevor Loudon online. Hello, sir. You were talking about how there are leftists in Washington who are trying very hard, or who may be able to use and manipulate the weakened America to their leftist political advantage. Can you talk about that?
My contention is absolutely. Now, there are two goals. And the American left, and that includes everybody from the Democratic Party to the unions, to some churches, to a lot of Hollywood, and the communist parties, the Democratic Socialists of America, they want to make sure President Trump doesn't get elected. And President Trump's greatest strength is a strong economy. So if they can destroy the economy or drive us into a depression, that means it's likely that President Trump won't get reelected. So they are absolutely piling into that. They're absolutely doing that. And they want this crisis to go on for as long as possible. They don't want a cure. They don't want people to go back to work. They just want to drag this out forever. Now, worse than that, though, this is being driven out of China. Now, I read the Chinese press, I read the communist press, and the Communist Party of China International Department issued a call 2 days ago on their website to 230 communist parties around the world. And the basic message is this. This is what we've got to do, people. China's not to blame for this. You cannot blame China for this crisis. You know, China is leading the world in curing this problem. China's sending people to Iran. China's sending ventilators to America. China is the hero in this. And socialized healthcare, which the Chinese have, is the way to handle epidemics. So 3 points. And the fourth point is America is the problem. Trump is the problem. He is endangering people's health. We've got to harp on these themes. Now, these are exactly the themes that our media is picking up on, and they're coming straight out of the Communist Party of China. Now, the one point we've got to understand here, for many years, Obama gutted the US military. You know, he cancelled weapon systems, he reduced troop numbers, Navy ships, whatever. He left the military at the end of his term the weakest it had been for years, since World War II levels in some cases. Now, the Russians and the Chinese, they know this, and they are building up their military like crazy. Now, President Trump comes into office, and he thinks we've got to correct this. So he starts rebuilding the US military, increasing the Navy, high defense spending, everything that's needed. But he can only do that on the back of a strong economy. If we're in depression, he can't do that. So the Chinese and their Russian and Cuban allies are promoting as much propaganda into this country, creating as much panic and unrest and fear as they possibly can to keep this crisis going so it guts the economy and destroys Trump's military buildup. That's the ultimate goal here. So every time someone like Rahm Emanuel gets up and spouts, he is basically helping the cause of the Chinese Communist Party. I'm sure he doesn't realize that or would agree with that, but that's what he's doing. You imagine the state of this country after 18 months of lockdown. You imagine the riots, the suicides, the business failures, the unemployment, the divorces, whatever would happen. But most of all, imagine where the military would be. The military would be gutted. And who would take advantage of that? China and their friends would take advantage of it. And if you don't think they'd take advantage of it, you've never read a history book, because that's what nations do when other nations get weak. The very least they will do, China's got huge gold reserves. They crashed the economy for 3 months. There will be assets and businesses for sale all over this country, and they will come in and buy everything at fire sale prices. And your job, if you still have one, will be for a Chinese boss, a Chinese Communist Party boss. And they will carry that right through to its military conclusion if they need to. This is ultimately a military propaganda campaign to spread massive fear and discontent in America, to weaken America just after Trump kicked their backsides in trade, just after they had the troubles in Hong Kong, and just after the Taiwanese elections went the wrong way and the Chinese voted for the anti-communist candidate. Chinese were under the gun. Trump's really hurt them. And are they going to wait? Can they handle another 4 years of this? So they are doing this to us. I can't say they deliberately released it. I can't say, I'm agnostic on that, but I can say that absolutely using this crisis for their propaganda advantage, and their real game is to destroy the US military so they become the dominant power in the world. It's as simple as that.
I have to tell you, Trevor Loudon, I wish every American in this country could have heard that brilliant summary of all the advantage that will flow to China as America's economy becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. All the items you just mentioned are so important. And I think for so many Americans, we are so possessed and overwhelmed by fear and by the presentation of this virus as being so deadly and alarming and out of control that we've pretty much submitted, our country has, at least to this point, pretty much submitted to what all of the edicts are from local governments, from mayors and city councils, just saying, well, okay, just whatever it takes to make us safe again. And we're not seeing the larger consequences. It is just, I mean, it is the most perfect storm. It's a perfect worst storm, because Americans are so fearful, they're just surrendering to this destruction of our economy.
Yeah, and if you stand against this, you're somehow antisocial and you want people to die. Well, look, you know, I'm not a medical doctor, but I know there's enough people out there who'll tell you this. This is an immunity problem. It's affecting people with compromised immune systems. Why don't we do, and I'm sure President Trump wants to do this, why don't we do what Sweden did and some other countries? You keep the economy going, but you spend the resources on protecting the vulnerable. You know, this is going to kill maybe 20, 30,000 people. And I regret every one of those deaths. I have friends in the age groups that will be vulnerable to this. But the flu kills 30 to 50,000 people every year in this country. And have you ever heard them shut down over the flu? When Obama was in power, the swine flu killed 35,000 people. There was no talk of any shutdown. There was no talk of bringing the economy to a halt. If a Democrat was in the president right now, this would not be happening. This is happening because the left wants to drive this country to its knees. The US left wants to destroy Trump and take power. The Chinese left, who are behind them, want to go even further than that and destroy the US economy so they can clean up financially and even militarily. That's the bottom line here, people. And so we got to go to that approach. We got to ease these restrictions, put the resources in protecting the vulnerable. You know, how many trillions and billions of dollars are we losing in revenue every day? 1% of that could protect every vulnerable, could put every vulnerable American into a plastic, incubator, to completely seal them off from the world. It's not logical. It's driven by fear, and the fear is being driven by our enemies, both domestic and foreign.
1,000% with you. I want to throw in too, you mentioned about shifting our strategy. There were from the right at the very beginning of the time we were dealing with responding to coronavirus, there were doctors saying, Dr. Katz at Yale and some Stanford professors were talking about, and the terms they used was, we should be using a vertical interdiction, meaning focus our resources on people who are vulnerable or ill, instead of what they contrasted with a horizontal interdiction, force everyone to stay home. These are prominent doctors making the same point, and somehow they don't have Trump's ear, or they are not in a position to arm twist Dr. Fauci, who is the main person advising Trump. And so at least at this point, we're going forward. But I want to switch. I don't know how much time we have. I want to switch to economics for a second. I'm impossibly concerned about the first I guess it was the third bill, the $2.2 trillion economic stimulus. And they're already talking about the next one to help deal with the crisis. Isn't this another form of weakening America that the left is celebrating and enjoying?
Absolutely. This is, again, inflate the currency. This is rotting America's moral fiber. The left has a meme at the moment. How do you turn a conservative into a socialist? $1,200. You know,
Gosh.
You know, this is what this is rotting our fiber. This is putting the economy in huge danger. The debt problem was already huge as it was. This is beyond rational. This is not rational. But see, Trump has been forced into this to a large degree because the whole left piled in. And if he said, no, we're going to keep the economy open, we're going to be rational about this, every grandmother who died would be on the front page of the news every day up until the election. So he's basically been forced into a position he's had to do the shutdown, but I think he's itching to get out of it, and that's the best thing to do. And we should be trying. I'm telling people, build support. Tell the president we're ready to come out of this. We've got to get the economy going. We're happy to put the money into protecting the vulnerable. We're all happy to do that. We're not like the Chinese who basically just let their old people die because they're useless eaters. The Chinese don't care about this. It's just less money on their health bill when these old people die. We don't see human life in those terms. And they are using that. They're using the goodness of this country to damage this country.
To destroy this country.
To destroy this country potentially.
Couldn't agree more. Trevor Loudon, I actually mentioned while you were adjusting your camera, you have a new book out. I think it's pretty new. White House Reds, Communist, Socialist, and Security Risks Running for U.S. President. It's a great title, first of all, yes. And you went through all the candidates. I want to ask you, though, because you did go through those. In your book, you're talking about, it's really the mindset or ideology of these people that is just, whether they acknowledge themselves to be socialist Democrats or not, they're leftists, they're Marxists, they are communists. But a lot of people on the left felt like, well, okay, most of them, Elizabeth Warren, really terrible. Bernie Sanders, who dropped out today, by the way, Bernie Sanders.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, but they say, well, but Biden's okay. He's just kind of your mainstream Democrat. That's how Democrats think about him. Tell us why that's wrong.
Look, Biden, I would say, was one of the worst of them. Now, Biden was the protege of a group called the Council for a Livable World, set up by a known Soviet agent in the early 60s with the objective of electing left-wing senators in small states where you could do it with not much money, and they would then be used to gut the US military. This was a Soviet front. And they put $280,000 into a little Senate race in Delaware in 1972 when a 29-year-old city councilor called Joe Biden was up against a 4-term incumbent Republican with an 80% approval rating, and they won. Ever since that time, Biden has worked in the interests of Moscow to gut the US military. He has cancelled weapons systems. He stood against the nuclear arsenal. He opposed Reagan when Reagan was opposing communism in Latin America. He worked with Obama to negotiate several bad treaties with Russia, which Trump has had to cancel because they were so terrible. In my book, my movie, I've got another movie, Enemies Within, I've got a clip of Joe Biden at the 50th anniversary of this group. The council's been with me all the way. They were there guiding me when I was on chaired the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. They helped me and Obama negotiate these treaties. He is a complete puppet of a Soviet Moscow front organization, which has done more damage to the US military than anybody could possibly imagine, to the benefit of Moscow and China. He's been a great friend to the mullahs in Iran. He is one of the most dangerous guys on foreign policy you could possibly imagine. And he is the moderate. You know, Buttigieg is a Marxist. Warren is a Marxist. Amy Klobuchar is a Marxist. But Joe Biden is the most dangerous of them all because he is a puppet for enemies of this country. Please say the name of the group again, the name of the group that got behind him, the council. Council for a Livable World. Look it up. They have a great big website. They've financed over 200 US senators, including Obama, including Bernie Sanders, and including Elizabeth Warren. All of them are puppets for that group, and that group is a puppet for Moscow. Council for a Livable World. And there's a big long chapter in my book about it, and I profile 9 other Democrats as well, and all of them, every single one of them has a Marxist background. So it didn't really matter who got it. You know, Donald Trump Jr. said on Fox and Friends recently, he said, the 2020 election will be communism versus freedom. And a lot of people thought he was joking. But when you read White House Reds, you'll realize he was not joking. He was right on. Well, I just downloaded your book this morning on my iPad. I'll confess I haven't had a chance to read it, but I will. White House Reds, Communists, Socialists, and Security Risks, Running for U.S. President 2020. You can find our guest today, Trevor Loudon, on Twitter at New Zeal, as in Z-E-A-L, New Zeal blog. We can find his website, Trevor Loudon, TrevorLoudon.com. Great website, full of information. You are just well, you're not, I guess you're not American by birth, but you're an American treasure because of all your just tenacious research and connecting of dots and laying out the connections between people who seem like, I mean, Joe Biden seems like garden variety Democrat American. Yeah. And I think just what you just laid out, unknown to most American voters. Look, there's a real history behind these people, and it's just not out there because the left the media covers for these people, the left-wing media. They certainly do. And all the points you raised today, I want to kind of summarize again. We were talking about earlier. This battle we have, the coronavirus is not a hoax. The reaction to it is a major problem. And on the American left, you have people very much seeing the weakening of the American economy as just a boulder in the road for President Trump's ability to continue to build up our military, repair our military, and also just what they love more than anything else is to have this horrific struggle we're in continue past election days. We just heard Ezekiel Emanuel saying, 18 months before we all have to stay home before we can even think about lifting these restrictions because of the vaccine. I mean, I don't know how much clearer the left could make it. They are using this crisis to harm and deeply harm America. I'll leave the last wrap up to you. Look, that's exactly right. Look, if Zeke Emanuel can callously consign over 75-year-olds to death, he doesn't care a lot about the rest of you. You know, and he is a typical elitist socialist. I sort of wonder what he'll do when he comes to 75. He might not be quite so keen to turn down medical treatment. But look, this is a war. This is a global war going on, and the Chinese are using this crisis to maximum effect to destroy America, destroy the economy, destroy your military so they can rule the planet. And the Democrats and the left here, they may not understand the full implications of it, but they want to destroy it to destroy Trump. They are absolutely committed to this. So they'll drag this out for as long as possible. So now's the time to start putting pressure on, get rid of the restrictions, put the resources on protecting those who really need it. The rest of us get out there, make some money, and do what we need to do to make this country prosper. Amen to that. Trevor Loudon, thank you so much for taking time to join us. It was great talking with you. A real pleasure anytime. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay, my friends, that was Trevor Loudon. I'm so glad we hung in there and got it hooked up. You know, this is a challenge, of course, when we're dealing with our remote setup here, but I love that. And I want to add to make a point about one thing he was saying.
There is a petition. I did the White House petition that is called Let Americans Work Again. And on that petition, you can go to our website, americacanwetalk.org. On the homepage, top blog article is Sign the Petition. You can click on that link, sign the petition. It is entirely intended to support President Trump. I know from people I know he sees what the left is doing. He does understand what they're doing. He does understand they're using this crisis to undermine America. This is a go President Trump, bring the economy back, let people go back to work petition. I urge you to sign it and share it with your 1,000 best friends. Okay, and that will be the end. Thank you again, Trevor Loudon, so very much.